I want to start with the basic question, and Governor, to you first. Why? Why is the Republican Party in trouble?
Well, I don't know that the party's in trouble, but we sure have had some setbacks. There's no question, but the last couple of election cycles were not good to us. In some respects, we were playing the same game in Washington that the other party was playing, which is spending too much money, creating a real question about the future of America's prosperity by virtue of that overspending. And I think as a result of that, people are saying, hey, we want to change.
And when Governor Romney makes that point that Republicans in Washington got caught up in all the spending, you're a Republican in Washington. You're the number 2 in the House Republican leadership. Is it George W. Bush's fault, or is it also Eric Cantor's fault?
Listen, John, I think there's a lot of blame to go around, and what we're trying to do here today is kick off a series of town hall forums so that we can get back to listening to the people.
If you ask the American people about the president's economic approach, about 2/3 say they support it and they back him. Is that a communications problem on your part, or is it that they support his policies?
You know, I think a large part is we don't know where those policies are going to end up. There is so much uncertainty right now. There are so many challenges economically to working families, to small businesses. People can't get credit anymore. Their lines of credit are being cut. People are being laid off. 15 people a minute are losing their job in this country. So the economic realities on the ground are a lot different than maybe what a certain question in a poll may be asking.
I think if you ask the American people, do you think it's a good idea for us to borrow $1.9 trillion more than we take in? Do you think that's a good idea? I think they'd say no. I think if you ask the American people, do you think the president's plan, which would create a doubling in the multi-trillions of dollars of our national debt, do you think that's a good idea? Do you support that? I think they'd say no. So part of our job is communicating just exactly what it is the president's proposing and making sure they understand there's a better way with a brighter future.
And as you try to learn about how to have a better platform and better communications in the next election, give me each of you your assessment of the last one. Barack Obama won big in the suburbs. Used to be Republican territory. Won big in the suburbs. Took 2/3 of the Latino vote. Was that because voters were mad at George W. Bush and maybe didn't see enough in John McCain? Or was it because they turned the page and looked at the competing proposals and said, I want this guy, not those guys?
I frankly believe that much of what happened in the last election revolved around the fact that the economy fell apart at the time we were, if you will, holding the hot potato. Republicans and Democrats have been playing this game, passing the hot potato, spending money like there was no tomorrow, and the economy came crashing down while our party was holding the hot potato. And people said, hey, it's time for something else. But I think if they take a good hard look at what the something else is planning on doing with regards to the massive borrowing, they're going to say that's probably not the right thing for America's future. I'm concerned that what the president's doing to our overall economy is what government did to housing, which is spend too much, borrow too much, create a bubble, and that bubble ultimately collapses.
Was it bad timing or was it bad choices?
Listen, I don't think there's any single reason why you can explain the election in November. First of all, could we have done better in Washington? Absolutely. I mean, could we have been more centered on our thoughts of fiscal sanity in Washington? Absolutely. Did the American public tire of the Iraq War? You better believe it. Even though we had our men and women fighting every day for our freedom, the public's patience was wearing thin because no one likes to be at war. And as the governor says, we had a collapse in our financial markets 30 days before the election. So there was a lot of fear and a lot of desire to say, hey, we want to put these bad times behind us. But ultimately, the future is about trying to be relevant in terms of what we're talking about, the policy prescriptions that we are going to propose to make sure that they make a difference. And it's not that the Republicans need to change to become like Democrats. We know the principles upon which our party is founded. They are the principles of free markets, of the rights of the individuals, of the faith in individuals, the faith in God, the ability for people to stand up on their own and reach for that opportunity.
And as you begin this listening effort, there are others in the party having the same debate. And I want to start with one piece of news this week was when Senator Specter decided he was going to switch to the Democratic Party. There is no doubt, and there should be no doubt, that he switched because he thought he was going to lose a Republican primary. It was a survival decision. He even concedes that. But there are some who say, here's a moderate Republican, comes from that area in the Philadelphia suburbs that's critical to winning the big state of Pennsylvania. Tom Davis, the former congressman from this area, calls it a devastating blow that sends a bad signal of ideological intolerance to moderate white-collar voters. Does it do that?
No, not at all. This was entirely a political calculation on the part of Senator Specter. He has every right to do that. He was a Democrat originally. He became a Republican. He's gone back to being a Democrat. It'll help him politically, and that's fine. Our party is a big tent party. We have folks of different perspectives. We've always been that way. We've always had different coalitions within the Republican Party. We'll continue to have that. This last election, we didn't win, but we didn't lose by an enormous amount. And we just need to make sure that we communicate our message effectively and draw those folks who watch with interest back to voting for us.
As you go forward on this effort, even you find it on Capitol Hill among Republicans. There are some who say, good riddance, Senator Specter. The Republican Party should move forward, going back to a conservative base that is low taxes, less spending, anti-abortion, against same-sex marriage, more ideological purity, and if he doesn't feel comfortable, get rid of him. And there are others who say that is a recipe for disaster, among them Olympia Snowe. Her, the senator for Maine. She says ideological purity is not the ticket back to the promised land of governing majorities. Indeed, it was when we began to emphasize social issues to the detriment of some of our basic tenets as a party that we encountered an electoral backlash. Who's right? Those who say smaller is okay as long as it's pure, or those who say that's the recipe for disaster?
John, I think it's a false choice. I think what we really need to do is look to the future. And if you look at Pennsylvania, is indicative of the challenges that our party faces in the Northeast and New England, no question. So we've got to go out and, again, reconnect and make sure that our policy prescriptions are relevant to the challenges that people in the Northeast are facing, to the challenges that educated, affluent families are facing, as well as those much more challenged in the inner cities and the rural areas of our country. There is a common theme in this country, and that is opportunity. That's what these forums are going to be about listening to how we tap into the real challenges and how we allow opportunity to flourish again.